Hello everyone and welcome to another video. This time we're going to be looking at the history of the first motorway service station to open on the M6. This is known as Charnock Richard. Charnock Richard, Keele and Knutsford were all identified at the same time, forming part of the plans for the M6. An additional site at Broughton was held in reserve while problems with it were investigated. Charnock Richard was pushed through because the road through here would be opening first, making it the oldest service area on the M6 when it opened in July 1963. It had been hoped that Charnock Richard would wait long enough to collect feedback from Watford Gap and Newport Pagnell, but the priority was to have it open with the motorway, so everybody involved had to assume that the previous examples were working well. In planning, it was sometimes called Heskin Services. The demand for catering here was expected to be low and consideration was given to having it open and selling fuel only, but this was thought to be too big a risk with possible high levels of traffic heading for Blackpool. The minimum spend allowed in the plans was £100,000, which is the equivalent to £2 million today. Designs were encouraged to have restaurants on bridges, which was regarded by the inspectors as an efficient and impressive design. Quite obviously there were several tenders for these services, and the first one being Airborne Catering Limited. As was the case with many of their bids, Airborne Catering Limited produced a poor design, poor catering proposals, but a suspiciously promising financial offer. This design had everything on the bridge. What was interesting was this was the fifth service area Airborne had bid for, and each bid was bigger than the previous one. They had still failed to prove that they were a financially stable business, but continued to promise more. They were again pulled up for their lack of attention to detail. Their architect was Sydney Clough, Son and Partners, who designed Knutsford. Airborne would have used a brand new name if they had won, but they didn't. Next was the Kenning Motor Group. Buoyed by winning the tender for Strensham, here Kennings planned a restaurant and a cafe close to a footbridge with transport cafes further away by the lorry parks based closely on Strensham. Their financial offer was particularly poor. As a garage firm, it wasn't clear who would be responsible for catering, so that was that. Loxham's garage were next, and in their plan Loxham's had a restaurant and a cafe on the bridge with transport cafes further away. Again, their financial offer was poor, but they showed expert knowledge and were told they would make a good operator. Next up was W. Blairmeyer, and this plan had a restaurant and transport cafe at each end of a footbridge. The building would have used buff bricks and stone. There would have been the underfloor heating in the restaurant and transport cafe. The first floor cafe would have been used as an open-air cafe, but could be covered. There would be polished hardwood tables with individual leather upholstered chairs and wallpapered walls. Sounds wonderful. Their landscaping efforts were poor. As an operator, they showed experience and were told they would do a good job. Their architect was H.W. Whedon, who also designed Watford Gap. Next is Oliver Hart, who had a double-decker design with a pedestrian crossing running underneath a restaurant, with a cafe and transport cafe at each end of the bridge. Their catering arrangements would be contracted out to Robley Limited, who had a good reputation for their work at Liverpool Airport. Plastic furniture would be used. How tacky. Next was Shadworth Garage Limited. This design had a restaurant and cafe on the bridge, joined by two transport cafes, and their landscaping was attractive. Last but not least was Motorway Services Limited. The Fortes and Blue Star combined firm made a grand design inspired by American chain Howard Johnson and designed by Terence Verity, who also worked on Keele. It had an entrance hall, snack bar and toilets on the ground floor. The snack bar alongside the motorway, and a cafe and restaurant on the bridge. The bridge restaurant, called Grill and Griddle, could hold nearly 300 customers. It involved a massive investment and a very long catering proposal. Their landscape effort was the best of all of the offers. The proposal was similar to their offer for Keele, but without the water towers and with a few minor changes. Their use of escalators was called a world first, and Motorway Services Limited had a financial offer which was placed in joint place, joined by the Airborne windfall. It was described as simple, orderly, compact and efficient. This was the only plan which had an attractive road layout. Each side had a large car park around the building and a small parking area for other large vehicles at the end. There was a large forecourt across the front on each side, each with 10 islands. Their use of the bridge was about providing good views, and the cafe would be bright and comfortable. The bridge restaurant had muted lighting and tables set into individual glass-side booths, while the cafe was a bright and light room. The Ministry were aware Motorway Services Limited had made an impressive bid for all three of the new M6 service areas, but each one was judged on its own merit. In the middle of the identified site was a large pylon which cost £7,700 to clear. In total, the Ministry spent about £227,000 on preparing the land, and Motorway Services Limited spent a further £370,000, which is around about £7 million in today's dosh. Lancashire Constabulary wanted a large building at Charnock Richard to make it the headquarters of their motorway division. An official opening ceremony was held on the 29th of July 1963, commemorating both the service area and the completion of this section of the M6. A sign above the door promoted private party rooms. A large number of celebratory postcards were sold, got that out, with around 6 different angles of the building available for sale. In 1964, the trade of the service area, which was associated with holiday seasons in Blackpool and the Lake District, was described as being full of fluctuations. The northbound side was busier, especially its cafe. On the southbound side, fuel was originally available on the immediate left. The back of what is now the northbound car park was originally for HGVs. Charnock Richard was the most complained about service station in 1976, mainly because of its high food prices. Another interesting fact is the motorway network's first Little Chef opened on the bridge in 1982. It was removed around 1996, with the service area now having Burger King, the Granary and La Brioche Brie. In 2006, the bridge had to be reconstructed because it was close to falling onto the motorway. Not a very good outcome if it happened. A report dated 1986 said the service area was employing 200 people and serving 3,000 meals a day. A ploughman's lunch was charged at 65p, around £3 in today's money. A seafood platter was £2.95, which is £12 in today's money, and a sirloin steak was £4.25, which would cost you around £18 now. A controlled explosion was carried out on 2 unattended suitcases left outside the southbound building on the 10th of December 1987. There was no threat. Service areas are busy transport hubs and couldn't take any risk during this difficult period. Over time, Charnock Richard's concept of placing the forecourt before the car park had fallen out of favour, both for safety reasons and because it goes against customer expectations. The northbound forecourt was moved to the former police unit area in the 1990s, but the southbound forecourt is still in its original position and remains a rare example of a forecourt being placed very close to the exit from the motorway. The risk was brought home in June 2021 when an errant HGV very nearly collided with the forecourt. Lastly, an American-style motel was attached to the service area on a separate parcel of land, where it was immune from the government's regulations. When this opened in 1974, the government were surprisingly open to the idea, as they realised the additional custom would lead to more food sales and therefore more tax income. Forte were experimenting with the idea of motorway hotels at the time, and this one included a breakfast bar, conference room and an alcohol licence. It was one of the first travel lodges to open in the UK, using a much more upmarket styling than they would become known for. The hotel became one of the early welcome lodges, later a Days Inn, and in 2018 it received a thorough refurbishment and a new entrance to become a Ramada. Well, that's one way to pass nearly 10 minutes, folks. I hope I haven't bored you to death. If you would like this video, please give it a like, share, and consider subscribing to my channel. And if you never want to miss a video, click on the notification bell. Till next time, take care of yourselves, folks, and ta-da for now.